Oh, we need a new plane in my way of thinking, or let's use the A-10. What do you feel about that?
Personally, okay, the A-10 has its role. The A-10's role in close air support is in a low threat environment. And there are different kinds of close air support. In a low threat environment, the A-10 that is very slow can go out there and find targets and hit targets. And oh, by the way, we put computers in A-10s.
Yeah.
When it first came out, they didn't have them, but we put them in there. But for a high threat environment with close air support, in other words, if you've got troops that are in there, but the threat against airplanes is still pretty high, the F-16 is a very viable airplane to do that with. So it kind of depends on the threat environment you're with. There are some threats that you cannot send an A-10 against. It will not survive. With its bathtub and armor and everything else, it just will not survive. Sir?
What is, knowing the capabilities we have now, what is the ideal future aircraft? I imagine the B-2 was somebody's dream 10 or 15 years ago. What is, from your perspective, what is the dream ideal airplane? What will it be able to do that we can't do today?
If you want my honest answer, it is a low-cost, inexpensive airplane that basically gets there, carries enough bombs, and that may be one or two to do a job, that has all the computers you can possibly stuff into it. And I hate to say it, you know, the ideal airplane probably doesn't need an operator. I mean, he may be sitting someplace else. He may not be in the airplane. And if you're really going to go to a big war, that's the kind of thing you want. I can see an evolution take place where you will perhaps have an airplane that has a pilot in it, but he basically is the team leader, and you have other vehicles going along with him that don't necessarily have operators in them. I mean, there's lots of stuff we could do. Sir, back to back.
Your professional opinion, future roles and missions of the Air Force?
Professional opinion, and you're putting this on film, huh? Unfortunately, I think a lot of that is unknown. There are a lot of people who talk about what the role should be, what kind of airplanes we should buy, how much money we should invest, how many fighter units we should have. There's an assumption right now that the threat is not there. We do not need that many airplanes. History tells us that that appearance will go away in time and we're going to need them again. I mean, that's what history tells us. What General McPeak, who is the Chief of the Air Force and the Joint Chiefs of Staff, is doing is trying to reduce the forces that we have to a level where you can still go do the kind of jobs we are asked to do, and we're currently being asked to do. You know, Bosnia is something that's really going on right now. Desert Storm happened just 2-3 years ago. I mean, those kind of things are going to happen in this real world. They are probably going to be more along the line of, I won't say policing activities, but very small military efforts that are concentrated into one area. I don't see for the next few years, 5 to maybe 10 years, that we'll get anything bigger than that. But I would suggest that within the next couple of years, we will start to see some evolution, some creation of some military might, whether it's China or a resurrected Russia. Some force out there will start to build up that we're going to have to contend with. But that's still out in the future, and I think right now the U.S. Air Force is just, we're trying to keep all of our avenues open. Don't get rid of everybody, don't get rid of all of our airplanes. Maintain a nice level. The Air Force Reserve and the Air National Guard is a good place to put airplanes, because you can still have pilots who are trained. The cost of the units and having airplanes out there is fairly low, lower than an active duty unit. And plus, we can maintain some of the experience. If you look at the active duty units today, you might find the squadron commander was in Vietnam, but most of the young kids, the only combat experience they have is in Desert Storm during that desert war. Yes?
How fast does the F-16 and the B-2 go about?
B-2 is actually a very slow airplane. It does not go supersonic, my knowledge, and I don't know everything about it. But it's a fairly slow airplane. The F-16 is advertised at Mach 2+. but that's up at altitude. On the deck, down low, where we normally fly and fight, the F-16 will go just slightly over Mach 1, up to about 1.5 is a good speed for us. If you go too much faster than that, we're just burning too much gas for the effort.
I was just saying, during the Second World War, you had to have a high school diploma to be a pilot. That's how much it's advanced since 1940s.
And I am very proud. My father retired at 42 years with the military. It was actually in the Air National Guard with West Virginia. And he went through cadets at the end of the war with a high school diploma and flew the P-51 and the F-86. And of course, he always threw up to me, you're not flying a real airplane, real airplane. You had to have a prop out there, and the P-51 obviously was the premier airplane of that era. And oh, by the way, a lot of people look at the F-16, and the vintage of the F-16 was the P-51 and the F-86.
But you flew by the seat of your britches when you was flying in airplanes. You didn't have all the computers or everything.
Yes, sir, you're right.
I just have one question. What's the difference between Gunsmoke and Williams Hill?
Okay, very good question, and these guys already know the answer.
I'm glad, because I don't.
Okay? Right back to our original discussion. There are two things we do with airplanes. One of them is air to air. The other is air to ground. Okay, Gunsmoke is air to ground. Williams Hill is air to air. Very good. You guys are really good.
Sir, how long do you foresee the F-16 staying in the inventory?
The F-16 will be in the inventory for the foreseeable future. We have approximately 1,500 airplanes in the active duty Air Force, or in the Air Force. And if you look at the dollars we have to go buy replacement airplanes, the dollars are not there right now. They've just seriously opened discussions about reducing the buy on the F-22 program. And if you know the F-22, that's the newest airplane for the U.S. Air Force. It's still in development. It is fairly expensive, and they're talking about numbers. We used to be talking numbers like 600, and now they're talking like 300. But you've got to keep the other airplanes around, so I think they'll be around a long time. By the way, the F-100 that I flew in Vietnam, when I transitioned to the F-16, we took our first deployment, the F-16, over to Denmark. And that was about 1983, 84 time frame. Denmark was still flying the F-100 at that time. So I think you'll see the F-16 flying somewhere in the world at the mid, 2050. Sir?
During your debriefing exercises, when do you go to the bathroom?
It's a good question. Fortunately, remember, I don't have to go back out and fly the same jet. Okay, so after you debrief maintenance, debrief intel, and debrief ops, you get to eat and do the other stuff.
Is the 22 a multi-role, supposed to be a multi-role aircraft?
The F-22 right now is not a multi-role airplane. The F-22 is an air-to-air airplane. Now, I'm not saying it won't be. And I hate to tell you guys, the F-16, the original design on the F-16, a lot of people will tell you, the original design on the F-16 was a lightweight, air-to-air day fighter, air-to-air. That's what it was originally designed for. And then we made the decision to make it multi-role and hang all this other stuff on it. One other last thing I said, and I remember now that I wanted to say something about Joe Bill Dryden. Joe Bill Dryden was a flight test pilot for General Dynamics, and if you're an aviation history buff, his name will be around for a long time. Unfortunately, he was killed this past year flying an F-16, and he was about 55, I think. But he was an example of a guy who just loves airplanes, loves to fly airplanes. I mean, he was an expert par excellence, and I'm just very proud to have had something to do with the digital train system that he supported so much. Yes, sir.
Just a couple questions. Is it Dryden the namesake of the Dryden Flight Research Center?
No, it is not. Not yet, anyway. Yes, sir.
In your flying, what, as far as going against dissimilar airplanes, which one do you like to go against the least? Which one is most challenging for you? And I'm not trying to find out that this airplane is a hunk of junk.
Well, You're talking air to air.
Yeah, air to air, which you
Remember,
might
I'm an
not
expert.
do.
I do pretty well at air to ground. Air to air wise, the airplanes that carry the big missiles are the ones that I don't like to go against. Because what happens is the computer tells where that big missile where to go, and at what we call the end game, what's coming at you is a missile, and that's what you've got to fly against. And the missiles nowadays are very capable. Some of the missiles will pull up to 80 Gs, you know, in the final turn. And my airplane will do 9 Gs. My body every now and then will only do 8. So not a fair fight against a missile. You, sir?
Yes, I have a question. On Gunsmoke, most of the bombs I saw were drop bombs, right? Why don't they use smart bombs? Is it just too expensive?
Too expensive, and that's another thing I should have brought up. You know, one of if you looked at Desert Storm, a lot of the pictures, we used smart airplanes and smart bombs. Unfortunately, that smart bomb, it had a computer on the end of it. On the front end, typically what we'll do is put some computer technology and some kind of a sensor. That package we put on the front end of the bomb is fairly expensive. I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars for some of them. The bad thing about it is when you drop the bomb and it goes off, that piece of equipment's gone. You don't bring it back. That's why we still have smart airplanes like the F-16s that drop what we call dumb bombs, which are very cheap and very inexpensive. Well, it's been a pleasure to be with you guys.
We have P-51 pilots, P-29 pilots in this group, and we're great. And we've been around, they associate very well with what we do. Thanks for coming. Next week is